Hi, good evening. How are you doing today? I was speaking yesterday about the effect of the variance in the mindset when people have different opinions, and that how does that create a big divergence in the teamwork. And just to recap, my live video sessions have been on mindset that drives our perception, our thinking, our deciding and acting or responding. And I've been asking you to do a simple exercise of trying to talk to your friends, neighbors, colleagues, or relatives on their perception of the people to people interactions now in the post COVID lockdown era, and what you believe or assume that perceptions would be, and try to find the commonalities and differences and start a dialogue for evolving a collective mindset. And I've been telling and I've been explaining that mindset is all about the way we are perceiving reality, the way we are thinking by connecting the dots, the way we are deciding either by assessing the benefit and the effort or just by going with the gut. And finally, the way we are acting and responding with conviction and consistency. That is what mindset is all about. And it is driven by the subconscious, is what I've been explaining, because the subconscious is an outstanding prediction machine. I say subconscious mind, and subconscious mind predicts what is going to happen in the next coming seconds in real time, continuously throughout our life, and therefore we are in a position to behave and work autonomously. And mindset drives that autonomy of working, autonomy of activities which we perform in our life and work, of course. Today, I want to now talk about something which is directly related to a company. And before I do that, I need to explain the size of the company, what kind of a company I'm talking about. I'm talking about a company which was started by the founder, of course, maybe about 40 to 50 years back. And the founder started the company, built up the company into a good business. And now today, this company has about, let us say, around 500 to 600 employees. It's a pretty big company. It's not a small one. And at the same time, it's not a small scale industry as such. 500 employees is pretty big one, and possibly generating a turnover of about 600 crores, which is 600 divided by 60, about 10 million. Is it 10 billion? How many would it be? 600 is 6 divided by 600 followed by 7 zeros, or 60 followed by 8 zeros, or 6 followed by 9 zeros, which is 6 billion. So 6 billion divided by 10 is 600 million divided by 6 is about 100 million. $100 million company, approximately. A company with about $100 million turnover and 600 crores in the Indian context, with about 400 to 500 employees, doing well. And then the first generation, or the founder entrepreneur, is wanting to pass on the reins to his next generation. And the next generation also has started off now. They've been there in the business for, let's say, about 10, 15 years. And they have really seen the world, and they really find it extremely difficult to change the mindset in such an organization. I'm talking about such organizations. And these young second generation have a dream to take the organization to 1,000 crore company, maybe a 2,000 crore company, at some point of time, $1 billion company. And that's their ambition. $1 billion would be about 65, 75 thousand, 7,500 crores approximately would be $1 billion company. And that's what their ambition is. And to do that, they have got quite a few challenges. And let me talk about something which is very interesting and very common across the board, all industries, all companies, and see if that could help in some way or the other my co-citizens, colleagues, and professionals and managers who are working in these companies, to really see how they could change the mindset. See, one of the classical situation in such a company is that it has been owner driven, and now it also owner driven, though there are some systems and there are some people who have put in ISO systems in place. And mind you, ISO systems sometimes are real farce, because if the company wants to implement, it's a different story altogether. And in my activity as a consultant coach, I come to know stories which is really shocking to me. There are a lot of companies who hire a consultant whose main job is to make sure that all the records are maintained in the company. He's not an employee of the company. Neither is he producing, nor is he inspecting, nor is he deciding. His job is only to maintain the records of the company, which means what should I say? I should not be using the word. it may be at some point of time, some kind of a cooking up maybe have to be done to make sure that the records are complete, because the guys who are doing it, they're not bothered in doing that. And finally, at the end of the year, when the assessment auditor comes in, it is his responsibility to get the certificate. And for getting the certificate, this chap gets some 5,000 to 6,000 rupees. And there are people in the market, because our market is flooded with people, right? We have got a lot of people. I remember when I was in Germany, the Rajasthan delegation had come there, and I was given the task of accompanying the Rajasthan delegation with the deputy chief minister, the general manager of the Rajasthan Industries Corporation, and my high-level VIP delegation was there, and I showed them around Stuttgart, and we came to this place. Schilleroe, where there is a small castle kind of a thing. You can't call it a castle; it's a palace, and a small palace. And there, the general manager was very impressed. He said that, look, Dinakar sir, it is absolutely fine. You are explaining to us the way waste is being handled, the way the transport works. Everything is outstanding here. It's basically because of the population. Because the population is this. Mind you, the population density in Europe is more or less the same as in India. It's not any different. Population density. The population is less, of course, yes. But the density is more or less the same. But that's a different story altogether. Let's not go into that direction. So then he said that population is very, very less in Europe. That's why. Then the minister got very, very upset. He said, "अरे यार, क्यों ऐसा बात करते हो यार? हमारा देश में population के सिवा है ही क्या?" You know, he said, in our country, apart from the population, what else do we have? That's something which really shook me up a lot, because people are there everywhere. And when people are there everywhere, there are chances of outstanding performance. At the same time, there are chances of deterioration, because the market is a free market, and there are people who will offer services which are not that outstanding, and they somehow have to survive, because survival is very much necessary. And there are companies who buy them. So these ISO consultants, which I am talking about, maybe one such, wherein they are offering services for just maintaining, or maybe, like I mentioned earlier, not to be using that word, but still in some way or other cooking up the data to make sure the company gets the certificate. Now, that kind, I'm not talking about companies of that kind. There are also companies who in the range of 600 crores who to some extent do that, but they do that internally, not externally. They don't employ an outside consultant, but they've got somebody employed within the organization to do a similar job. Of course, I'm not speaking about that kind of a situation. Let us say we have a company which has got certifications and then have processes in place, and they want to grow. Now, this company has a vision of going to a next level. Okay, they have systems. Systems are always there. Like I said, the ISO systems, but they have huge difficulty, and that's because of the mindset within the organization. So, how do you drastically change the mindset? Kind of a surgical strike, like with our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi involved in quite a few surgical strikes. The word surgical strike has become quite popular in India. So I use the same word again, surgical strikes. How do you do a surgical strike to really get the entire organization back on track? To really start talking about that kind of a culture and mindset, which is necessary to become a billion-dollar company. See, in a billion-dollar company, a company which is a multinational company in multiple locations with doing a very, very high business, there are 2-3 things which are extremely classic and very, very consistent across companies. Be it a Bosch, a Volvo, Larsen and Toubro, Godrej, or Aditya Birla Group. I'm talking about Indian companies, or maybe a GE, maybe a BMW or a Daimler Benz, or a French company like a Cafu, whichever company you're talking about, or Faurecia, Valeo. All these companies have something in common. They've got mainly in manufacturing is what I spoke about, even retail, Kafo, for example, or Target. Every company has got something which is unique, which is basically a Toyota, Japanese, or Hyundai, Samsung, or Hyundai, South Korean. So all these companies have something which is very, very in common. We're a huge multinational company doing very well across the world. First of all, they have got a very, very clear, what is called a strategy management process, which is not that difficult to implement in a smaller company. Mindset is not that challenging there. Then the next they have got is a very clear structured policy deployment or target deployment process, wherein the targets are derived from the top vision and mission, and from there on it goes cascaded, like it goes in a cascaded manner up to the working level. That is the second thing which is quite standard in these companies. I'm not talking about appraisal, whether you give A plus or a B plus and try to fit it into a bell curve, or don't do an appraisal, do an appraisal. That's a big debate which is going on. Some point of time, people want to fit into a bell curve. then that comes out, then there is a different idea of not fitting into a bell curve, then to give a feedback in real-time basis. Now GE is talking about getting away from the appraisals totally and then giving a feedback, and then they're talking about peer feedback. So various things are going on. I'm not talking about the feedback. I'm talking about the target, to really say what are you responsible for, what is your accountability. That is the second thing which is done very thoroughly. And the third thing which is done very, very thoroughly is the review culture. That is something which is extremely strong in those companies, very, very strong. Whereas in the companies which I'm talking about, which have a dream to go to $1 billion, companies in the range of $100 million or 600 crores wanting to go to 6,500 or 7,000 crores, these companies have also a process of target deployment top down, again implemented by some couple of consultants who possibly did their best, and then gave them the process as to how it has to be run. But then they didn't work on mindset change. Like I said, I don't know whether you watched my video. I was talking about that yesterday. The easiest thing is to get the solution. It's not difficult at all. For somebody with experience like me, or like any other consultant or any other experienced, seasoned professional in a company, finding a solution is the easiest. The problem is implementing it. It's not easy at all, because there's a very, very strong, popular quote by Thomas Alva Edison, who said, invention is genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So 1% is what we're talking about as a consultant, as somebody who came from outside, gave an idea, or somebody from inside gave an idea how to do it. Then the remaining 99% is the place where they fail, because that's the huge challenge to change the mindset. So here what happens, the process is there, but then it is not done to its true spirit. So therefore the targets are not really aligned, and some problems are there. Of course, that is not something very, very critical. The main problem is reviews. I will take the next 3-4 minutes to explain that. And what I have experienced in my assignment so far, whenever I've gone to any company of this size, the biggest challenge is the review. They have got a management board meeting, because that is mandatory. You can't really get away from that. Every 3 months, there has to be a board meeting. And for the board meeting, the files and data and everything is prepared and presented there. The consistency in board to board is not there, missing totally. There is no concept of growing. There's only concept of total revolution. Each board meeting will be totally a different agenda, different topics, and the slides will be different. The format may not be always the same. And the text which you use there is not the same. The content may not be the same. The metrics will not be the same. So it's a very, very tough situation. But still the meetings happen. Then on a monthly basis, in all these large companies, there is a mandatory management meeting, a management review, where you're talking about all the key metrics of the organization, the key outcomes of the organization, which would be customer outcomes, then your supplier outcomes, people outcomes. Then you talk about the society outcomes, and of course the key results. Key outcomes would be those you're talking about, the whether it's ROCE or return on capital employed, or it could be return on investment, or could be EBITDA on a monthly basis, could be profitability. That is something which is done. Most of these companies do that, and that is done in a very closed group meeting. It will not be something which is known to everybody. Whereas in a larger company, it is quite known to everybody. Therefore, the mindset changes. Here, I just digress and come to an example. I was playing a doHow game with one of my clients, and the activity was to assess what is the level of performance of the company when it comes to cash flow on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. Now, in that company, this is a company which is smaller than the 600 crore company, much, much more smaller. They were about 25, 30 crores turnover. And the owner also was sitting along in that doHow game. And there were teams which were talking about giving their opinion. And the teams which had the lower level in the organization, not very high. This organization has only 3 levels. And the lowest level, that they came up with the answer that it is 7 or 8 cash flow for our company. It is really good. We are getting our salaries on time. Everything is happening on time. Whereas the team which had the managing director, he said the cash flow situation is 2 for me, because constantly I'm behind a manager to borrow money to give these guys the salary. And that information itself, that transformed the entire team that day, because mindset gets changed because of an emotional experience. That employee, the lower level employee, had a phenomenal emotional experience that, look, I really never knew that the company was having such difficulty. Otherwise, I would have taken a lot of care in whatever I do. And that's what he said. Of course, change that they improved. That's a different example. I'll talk about that some other day. So when we talk about this data and when we talk about the monthly report, it's important that at least the key players, the top management is aware what the current reality is. That really creates a common mindset, which is sometimes missing. Then the biggest challenge is the daily review and the weekly review. See, in my wisdom and my understanding and what I've experienced and what I've lived is to have a daily standing review, with a 3-day frozen rolling plan. It's a rolling plan. 3-day rolling plan, daily review is mandatory. Then on a weekly basis to see what kind of improvements are we doing. These are two things which are necessary. Without that, if you are doing a monthly review, it doesn't make any sense at all. Now, moment you put in these reviews in place, accountability improves exponentially, and the mindset changes digitally, because now you are talking about developing a collective mindset on a consistent basis to tell this is what I'm looking for. Talk about that tomorrow in detail. Thanks a lot for watching. For those of you in India, have a nice evening. And for those of you outside India, have a great day ahead. Oh, sorry, before I leave, I need to talk about my exercise to you all. Please talk to your neighbors, friends, relatives, or colleagues on their perception of the reality of people-to-people interactions and what you assume their perceptions would be, and try to see what are the commonalities, differences, and try to develop a collective mindset by starting a dialogue with them. Thanks a lot for watching. Goodbye.